Hey guys, welcome back to more real estate HOA stories. In this video, OP got revenge on an evil homeowner association by buying a truckload of properties. Let's dive right into the video. I spent years in big cities buying and trading stocks and other things for a decade until it basically burned me out. I had more than enough money to live off of for the rest of my life and decided that I didn't want to make millions of dollars only to die from a stress-induced heart attack or something like that. I was gonna enjoy and relax the latter half of my life. My kids were grown up, my wife was gone, and I just wanted to be happy. It took years to figure out that leaving that world I was in was needed in order for that happiness to be achieved. The most important thing was to get away from the city and all the noise. I found a nice neighborhood to live in where I could have a property not right on top of another one. I got the dog I always wanted and never had time for. The shelter could not be 100% sure what the breed was, but it was obviously some kind of golden mix. He loved running around the big lawn and watching TV with me. I was relaxing for the first time, and I did not even pay much attention to the fact that there was an HOA in this neighborhood. I felt like if paying some HOA fees meant that I could live in this nice place, it was worth it. I had not been on the internet too much and did not see any of these horror stories. It was not until I told my son and he showed me this website and all of the things on it about HOAs and how they can be a real pain for people. Random side note, it also led me to finding some very nice and interesting things that helped me kick off some new hobbies. Amazing what is out there that I had no idea about. But back to my HOA. The HOA board members are the types of personalities that I'd seen plenty of during my years of working. No matter what these people had or got, it was never going to be enough for them. They fed off of money and power like it was an addiction. Once they got used to the dose they needed more in order to get that feeling back. They wanted to boast about themselves so much that I would get HOA pamphlets in the mail, and instead of them being about improvements to the neighborhood, they would just be about the board members themselves and how amazing they apparently are. And of course, these pamphlets would also show new rules that they put into effect, but they couldn't just list the rules, oh no, they had to talk about why they decided it was a rule and praise themselves more for their time and effort in coming up with it. None of the reasonings ever made sense and basically boiled down to them saying it would help the community as a whole, but without even once, not a single time, saying how it actually would help the community. Basically a trust me bro situation. And some of these rules were just insane, and there was no way a person was gonna manage to keep up with everything, and getting fined was just an inevitability. What I believe also happened that I couldn't prove for sure was that they were setting up rules for things they knew they could immediately fine a bunch of people for. Like when they banned lawn flamingos for looking tacky, it was obvious they were going to find the 5 or so homes that they had them before they would read the new rule and be able to do anything about it. Of course, all of this is leading up to when I got a fine in the mail for the very first time. Well, calling it a fine would seem so much less than what it was, but I can let you all be the judges of that. The letter said that I was being fined for my lawn not being green enough and for allowing my dog to run around on it, followed by another sheet of paper listing another fine regarding my car, claiming that I need to park it further into my driveway. The car is in my driveway but closer to the street end of it, and they want it closer to the garage end of it. Finally, the third letter was a note stating that I need to abide by the HOA laws, and if I don't follow the rules and pay my fines in a timely manner, then I might be happier looking for another neighborhood to live in. It was clear they knew I had money and were gonna try and milk me for it, but they were wrong. I did not take threats lightly I guess, and the money was not the issue, but the principle that they couldn't just make up any rule they wanted and fine me for it. I did not want to start a big fight and instead went to try and calmly speak to them about the fines and how they were going a little bit overboard. I get that you want things a certain way, but nothing I did actually violated anything. It's a heat wave, and grass is not something that can be 100% controlled unless it's AstroTurf. HOA, if you didn't let your mud run around, then it wouldn't be that way. My dog is not making the grass less green, the heat is. As for my dog, you cannot fine me for that either, since I'm making sure he stays on my property and nowhere else. The same goes for my car, since I'm not parking in the street or blocking anything. HOA, okay listen, you're not the first one to think that they can get out of a fine. My suggestion is to pay for it because you don't want to have this go to court. We have put liens on houses for unpaid debts and we can do it again. Me, you can try to do whatever you want, but I promise that it won't end well for you. I did not actually mean to threaten them like that, but it just came out after being spoken down to by them. I left and didn't pay the fines, only for more to come in. Soon, I was being fined for every small thing they considered to be out of place. My bins being out a little too long? Fined. My dog barking because he was excited? Fined. I was collecting a nice stack and did not pay for a single one. They were attempting to make my life absolutely miserable, and I was just wondering how I could get rid of them. It was clear none of the money was for making this place better, and they just wanted to be the big bullies having all the power and soaking in it. I looked into and spoke to a lawyer about how one could get rid of an HOA, and the easiest way was to get a majority vote for it to be disbanded. The problem was that people were so scared of them and the fines that they didn't want to go against them. I understood that and figured out there was another way to get what I wanted, while also showing them that they were not as all-powerful and controlling as they believed. One thing about this neighborhood I didn't mention until this point was that it was newer and not all of the properties had been sold yet. In fact, there were a good number with the houses still being built. I called up my real estate agent and told him that I wanted to find out how many properties within the HOA were for sale and if it would be enough to make me a majority owner. Turns out there was enough, but I would need to purchase 50 properties in order to do so. Not exactly how I expected to spend my money when I retired, but I started the process of buying everything up like it was a weird game of Monopoly. I made sure all of the ownership was under a company name instead of my own, so the HOA would not know what I was up to. It just looked like from the outside some wealthy company wanted to buy all the properties and then sell them for more once the houses were done. Sadly, a thing that does happen in life, and for a profit I disagree with the practice, I waited patiently until the next public HOA meeting, which I attended and made myself not stand out while I listened to them. A meeting would be a stretch of the word because it was similar to those pamphlets that they handed out. It was them praising themselves for keeping the neighborhood clean and people in order. Once they finally stopped long enough to ask if there was other business before they would send everybody home, was when I finally stepped forward. Me, I'm here to open a vote to disband the HOA totally. HOA, you cannot do that. Me, well actually it states in the bylaws that at any meeting, any member is allowed to open to a vote the continuing status of the HOA. HOA, are you really dumb enough to think that people are gonna side with you about this? There aren't even enough voting members present. You cannot win a vote. Me, that is where you are wrong. I have a full list here of properties within the HOA in my ownership. If you count them, you can see that I'm the majority holder and I have enough in my single vote to control it. The HOA board was fuming and started screaming that I couldn't do that and that they wouldn't allow it. They could not legally stop it from happening though, and I had full control at that point to do whatever I wanted. The first being making all outstanding fines voided, and the second being getting rid of the HOA as a system. The now ex-members of the board tried and failed to threaten me because at this point they had zero power and I could almost hear the air coming out from their deflating egos. They were humiliated having this happen in front of a huge crowd of people. They told me that this would not stand and they would sue me, but I never heard from any lawyers about it. I did not need 50 properties and sold them at the same value that I bought them for. It was not about making a profit, but about getting rid of the HOA that just wanted to hurt people to make themselves feel good. Nothing bad has happened from there not being an HOA anymore, and instead people seem more relaxed and at ease than before. And yeah guys, in case you were wondering how rich OP is that he can just buy 50 properties and not even really care about it, well, I can give some insight into that because OP answered a few comments in the comment section, and apparently he's not just a millionaire, but he has hundreds of millions of dollars. So a legit multi-millionaire. Let's just say, I hope there would be more multi-millionaires that take care or disband evil HOAs. Good riddance. Either way, the next one is a malicious compliance story, but before we start, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Your help is very much appreciated. Another post today about landlord shenanigans in college reminded me of this story I thought the sub might get a kick out of. So I moved into a place in a college town and it seemed perfect. Low rent, newly refurbished, backyard for my dog, included washer and dryer, etc. The one problem I had was the owner. Even though he hired a property management company to collect rent and manage the property, he would constantly drop by to look over the property, saying he would renovate this or that part of the house or just stay and shoot the bull after I gave him multiple not so subtle hints that I wanted him to leave. His son had previously lived in the unit, so it seemed he was used to being able to come by whenever he wanted, and as a retiree he very often wanted to stop by. Well, at the time the state I lived in required 24-hour notice for when a landlord or management company could drop in unannounced. And it needed to notify you before they showed up at the residence. Also, in my lease it specifically stated that any contact between the owner and myself needed to go through the management company. So, being tired of an old man hanging around my house, I called the management company to ask them to remind the owner that all communication from the landlord goes through them and for them to tell him to give 24-hour notice before stopping by as stated in the tenant laws. He did not like this, and I'll also say that in college towns property management companies really want to know if you're renewing a lease within a few months of you moving out. They typically run on a schedule similar to semesters as far as when people move in and out of their properties. I moved into this place in January and they went as far as letting themselves into my house to leave a note asking me to let them know whether or not I was renewing my lease 2 weeks after I'd moved in, as I had signed a 6-month lease. Not sure why they couldn't just send an email, mail a letter or call me, but I think they learned their lesson about being pushy that day, as I was doing yoga in my underwear that morning and the poor girl they sent over to deliver the renewal letter was probably traumatized for life after seeing my fat ass in Downward Dog. Anyways, I liked the place enough to renew and signed a year-long lease renewal. However, about 3 months later in March, I get a text from the owner saying that he heard I was interested in renewing my lease, but that his daughter had been accepted into the university, so he wanted her to stay there. This was confusing to me because A, he should have gone through the management company to talk to me, and B, I had a lease contract already signed by the rental company and him. So I called the management company to sort this out, and the conversation goes something like this. So the owner of the property I'm living in contacted me to say that he's not interested in leasing the property anymore. Company representative CR, oh yes, it looks like the property won't be available next year. Okay, but I have a lease signed by both your company and the owner for the next year. CR, well, I'm sorry, but the owner no longer wants to lease the property out. We can help you find a new property in the area if you like. I had read the lease pretty closely, and at this point I had the suspicion that the owner and this company thought I would just roll over because they said so. Unfortunately for them, I was about to come back with some malicious complaints to their own lease. So you're saying that your company is breaking the lease contract we have for next year, correct? CR, whoa, nobody's talking about breaking any contracts with anybody. That is what you just said though. I have a lease for this place with your company, but the owner doesn't want a lease. We have a contract, but you are unable to fulfill the contract because the owner is backing out. CR, no, this is something you need to sort out with the owner because he is backing out of your lease. By our current and renewed lease agreements, all contact between myself and the owner is required to go through your company. I already renewed the lease for next year with signatures from both your company and the owner. At this point, the disagreement is between you and the owner over whether he wants to back out of the lease we all signed. Good luck sorting it out. We went back and forth like this for a while, and eventually I got passed up the chain at the management company to one of the owners. While I was waiting, likely because they were scrambling to come up with some way to convince me that my complaint was a lost cause, I was reading my lease and noticed some vague wording having to do with the company being responsible for accommodations during periods when the property is unavailable or inaccessible. So then I spoke to the management company owner shortly after this. Management company owner MCO, I know property owner personally, and there's no disagreement between us about this property being available. He wants his daughter to live there next year, so we are not renting it out or something. Well, that's your prerogative, but at this point, are you breaking our lease contract? MCO, no one is breaking the contract. Okay then, if you're saying you want to keep our contract but the house will be inaccessible because the owner won't rent it out, then you're willing to put me up somewhere else for the duration of the lease for free, right? I pointed out in the lease where this statement was, and the MCO hung up the phone. I'm no lawyer, but the management company probably could have argued that was not the intention of the clause, seemed to be more pointed at pest infestation, but was listed in a general section of the lease. I'm pretty sure they just gave it up because I didn't hear from them about this after that conversation. They must have decided it wasn't worth the hassle from me and told the property owner that they had his signature on a contract they were not gonna break or honor under the circumstances of paying for me to live somewhere for free for a year. Also, there were some half-hearted texts from the property owner after that threatening to evict me, but I did end up staying another year there. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. If any of you, like me, live in the UK, you will know how hot our summers can get. Well, let's be honest, they don't get that hot, we are just not used to the heat and our houses are not equipped for keeping heat out. You will also know that pools are uncommon here, and the next best thing being a homemade slip and slide or a paddling pool that can fit no more than 2 toddlers. So yes, I know that the heat is usually an issue, but I would never have thought anyone would go to the lengths my neighbor did to cool down. I'm calling her my neighbor for the sake of this story, but in reality she lives about a 5-minute drive away from me, all the way down to the bottom of the town. I was fortunate enough to inherit a lovely property from my late grandfather. It's a quaint little rural property at the top of a town in the north of Wales. The land stretches for a good few acres and the house itself is set atop a small hill that stretches all the way to a small river near the bottom. It is a lavish property to say the very least, and in this economy I'm very lucky to own it. I've done my own refurbishments over the years, the main one being adding an outdoor pool next to my house. It took a lot of money and time, but once it had been done, it added nearly 100k to the property value. In the winter, it's not much use of course, but in the summer it really is a blessing. So that takes us to the start of this story, when it was the first few weeks of July and the air was heating up. A woman had knocked on my door. "Hello, would you mind if we used your pool?" a woman asked as I opened the door. She gave me a sweet smile and I would have said yes if it was not for 6 children standing behind her, all of which looked to be full of cold. "I'm sorry, no," I replied and began to shut the door. "Why not? What on earth is the issue?" The woman put her foot out to stop the door closing. "You have 6 kids with you. Kids make messes and they all look ill." "These are my kids and I can promise you they don't make any mess, nor are they ill." "Well, they look certainly ill. It's just a bit of a summer cold, everyone gets it. I'm sure you will cope." "Look ma'am, I'm sorry, but you cannot use my pool." She stared at me for a moment as if thinking I would cave and just let her use it if she stared long enough. "Why don't you go to the public pool? It's half a mile south of town," I suggested, to which her face scrunched up. "We cannot use a public pool. Think of all the germs that are just swimming around in there." She flailed her hands to emphasize this point. "So germs are a problem for you, but they shouldn't be for me?" I asked with a smirk, knowing I had caught her in a knot. She stumbled over her next words before turning around and stomping off to her car, and the kids following. I stupidly thought that would be the end of that woman, but alas, the next day she was back and this time she had another woman with her and her kids once again. "Hey, my sister is saying you won't let her use this pool, but I think that cannot be right, because who would deny someone of such a small request?" the second woman asked, batting her eyelashes. If it was not for the persistence and rudeness of the last woman, I probably would not have minded them using the pool, but hey, they were just being ridiculous now. "It's my pool, you are not entitled to be able to use it," I replied, scything as I crossed my arms. "That's ridiculous. We came all this way and now we cannot use this pool?" the original woman asked. "Again, it's my pool, so no." "At least we asked. We could have just jumped in." "Gosh, how can you be so… you know what, I think we all got off on the wrong foot. I'm Julie. I live at the bottom of the town near the shops. Me and my family don't have the luxury to have such a pool, and as you know, it has been roasting this time of year. Would there be any way we could use your pool for as little as 10 minutes? Julie, the original woman, asked. "I'm Sam, and you know what? Sure, as long as you promise to clean up after yourselves. And this is a one-time thing, okay?" "Thank you," Julie screeched, and the 2 women and 6 kids ran off and jumped straight into the pool. They had come wearing their swimming suits. I sighed, annoyed that I ended up caving to their wishes, and went inside. Half an hour later, I could still hear them outside, but they were not being too loud, so I just let them stay. I remember falling asleep and waking up to silence, and looking outside, I saw that they had gone. But had they cleaned up after themselves? Of course not. There was food wrappers all over the place, the deck chairs were in different places, and some of the flowers I had planted near the pond had been trampled on. So wow, this is what I get for graciously allowing them to use my pool. I cried, angrily cleared up the mess, muttering to myself as I did so, "They better not come around again, or I swear." Alas, they did, the following day. "Hi Sam." I know you said it was a one-time thing, but could we perhaps use your pool again? Julie asked. She had her children with her again, plus a few other friends. No, you left my pool area in an absolute state the other day. I might have agreed otherwise. Listen, you know how kids are. You said your kids don't make a mess, and I thought even if they did, you would have the common courtesy to clean up after them anyway. The woman looked between her friends, all of their expressions unreadable, but I learned later exactly what they were silently plotting. You're right, we should have cleaned up, and it was rude of us to come asking again. Good day. And with that off, they went. At 2 in the morning that night, I woke up to the sound of loud music playing outside. Alarmed, knowing I live quite isolated, I dashed to my window to look outside where the music was coming from. I nearly fainted when I saw what was happening down below. Julie was in my pool along with her kids, strange time for them to still be awake by the way, plus the friends from earlier, and about 20 other people that she must have dragged along. She was basically throwing a pool party in my pool on my property. I dashed downstairs as fast as I could. What are you all doing? Get out of my pool right this instant! I demanded, halting the music on their record player. No, we are here now. Let us be, Julie yelled back, her words slurring, so I figured alcohol was also involved. Turn the music back on, someone else called out. Guys, I'm not gonna ask again. Get out of here. Call the police on this creep, another guest spoke up. I watched as someone got on the phone to the police, gobsmacked. How could they possibly think that they were in the right in this moment? I decided to just wait until the cops showed up. I would have needed to phone them anyway. Because of my rather remote location, it took a quick minute for them to arrive, in which time everyone carried on partying like nothing was wrong. So what seems to be the issue here? Who phoned in? An officer asked once they arrived on scene. This man is being a total creep. We are trying to have a pool party and he just came out of nowhere. He is not invited. Julie spoke as she climbed out of the pool. Sir, this is my house. Honestly, I told them they couldn't use the pool and here they are throwing a party and they still won't leave. We all went back and forth for a couple more minutes until I ended up pulling up the CCTV footage on my phone, which showed them asking for permission, me saying no, and then them creeping over with all their stuff at early hours in the morning. And who is the head of all of this? The officer asked. Almost everyone pointed to Julie. I pressed charges, of course, not that I needed to, but I figured it was the punishment she deserved. She ended up having to pay a hefty fine for any damages caused to my property, plus a fine for trespassing. Every other guest at the party also had to pay a smaller fine, which I'm sure will be the cause of the end of the friendship with Julie. To top it all off, Julie was arrested that very night for trespassing and making a false report to the police. Crime never pays off. Trust me, Julie, she will be confined to a very small space for quite a while now, but I'm not sure this entitled Karen really regrets what she did. And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. And also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much and I will see you again tomorrow.